The price of failure. The price. What an odd saying. As if failure had a value. As if one would be willing to purchase it. Ridiculous, really. Now success. Success has a value. Success can have a price. But failure? Value? Price? It's incoherent. The cost of failure. The cost. But even that doesn't seem to go far enough. It's much more insidious. The tax of failure. The tax. Yes, the predator of value. Its vampiric nature.
Sorceress, will you sign this offer? Though annoyed to the point of seething anger that her thoughts were interrupted, she gave only a bored sigh and signaled her servants for more wine. House Iolith had dispatched one of their many fleet masters to set the terms of her captured apprentice Ain's ransom, and to renegotiate the contract in their joint enterprise into the old world. The venture was a success in many ways. The ship's holds and stores were flush with slaves and gold, and House Iolith's head of house was a casualty of the expedition. Wealth gained and an adversary lost, two beautiful prospects. Unfortunately, the venture was also a failure in the most important of aspects. The daughters of the Empyrean Void were not in possession of the ships. In addition, the death of Lord Animaximander was not by the dangers of the battle, or misfortune of travel, but by open assassination by order of her apprentice, Ain. Now Lord Animaximander's twin daughters were head of house, and they responded in the most overreaching and juvenile manners. Here sat, not a diplomat, not a courier, but a damn cur, demanding an offer that would see her purchase a failed apprentice, lose most of her agreed bounty in reparations for the loss of the house's lord, and subjugate the daughters politically as pawns of House Iolith. If not these terms, then her destruction. An offer. Well, Harlana had a counter-offer, and we begin by sending this indignant, foolish fleet master's head back to House Iolith. Aloha, it's CreativeNameToStandOut again with another battle report. This, of course, is the first battle report of 2015. I hope everyone had a great set of holidays. I know I did. It was almost too hard to come back and get into the habit of things, but I did save this particular battle report kind of to cajole me, inspire me, or what have you, into doing so. So this, of course, will be a continuation from the last battle report between these two factions. This is, if you haven't figured out already, a narrative battle report, and it helps, I feel, make a clear-cut differentiation between the two factions, and so that's why I like doing it for this particular set of battles. So with that, let's kind of go over what happened last time and then jump into the first turn. Now, as already established, these two factions had gotten together and decided they wanted to go into the old world and gain riches and slaves, and that campaign was largely successful. However, during the campaign, in the view of House Iolith, they needed to renegotiate the terms, and this, of course, led to open conflict. Now, during the final battle here, Lord Animaximander did die to the blade of an assassin, and Ain found herself in a situation where the game ended up in a tie. Now, there had to be some sort of balance point that needed to be tipped, so I decided that since Ain didn't win convincingly enough, despite the fact that the Lord had been assassinated, she wasn't in control of the ships, and so she wasn't going to be able to persuade the Corsairs back at the ships to come to her side. So when she arrived, her men were killed, she was captured, and now word has spread back to the homeland that the Lord has fallen. And so, as the ships have returned, the twin daughters, I think it's Caliphone, the warrior, and Hecate, the sorceress, have decided they want to kind of add, insult to injury, kind of embarrass the daughters of the Empyrean Void, and this has led to, surprisingly enough, another war. So here we go into this conflict, and we'll see how it goes. So first turn goes to my opponent, and let's see how it ends up being. So my opponent gets the first turn, and the first thing he's going to do is declare a charge with his Coldwood Knights into one of my units of Vanguarding Dark Riders. Now, I'm at the very edge of his charge range, and so he's going to fail that, and after that he's just going to move things up just a tad bit. I won't be in range to charge him really, but he's already moving forward. So after that he goes into the magic phase. Man, and I love these magic phases. I just wish it was my turn and I had this magic phase. It usually means that you get a spell off, and sure enough he gets Doombolt off, and he kills 3 of my 5 Doomfire Warlocks. And with that, we go into my turn 1, and so my goal in this game is to get the Dread Spears in with the Hydra, because it's really the only thing I could use to easily deal with the Hydra. So I just tie it up, hopefully. So I'm going to break out with my fast cav. I'm going to try to hunt down his sorceress there and send my witches into his witches. And then over here you can see I do push the Dread Spears up into range of that Hydra, and I'm going to use my Executioners back a little for support. Alright, so I move my Doomfire Warlocks in the way so that his Doomfire Warlocks can't charge the rear of my Dark Riders, and then we jump into the magic phase. Now I'm looking here in the magic phase just to do a little bit of wounds here, a little bit of wounds there, but he ends up stopping both of my initial spells, but I pull out my little trick here with Power of Darkness. Of course it fails. That leaves me with only 2 dice to cast Doombolt on, and that's a no-go. So after that, I do some shooting. I do try to shoot the sorceress down, but she doesn't take any wounds because she has a 3+ ward save against shooting. And then I think I kill about 2 or 3 witches, so that's not too bad. And we jump into House Iola turn 2. What you're looking at right now are some Cold One Knights that failed the stupidity check. That's really bad for my opponent, and he goes into the charging phase. So first thing he's going to do is not charge my Dread Spears with his Executioners. He's going to charge the Executioners into my Executioners. Then he's going to declare a charge with his Swordsman into my Spearmen. He's going to fail that, thankfully, and then his Hydra is also going into the Spearmen by themselves. He also then declares a charge with his Doomfire Warlocks into mine, looking to clear them out of the way, and he's practically just charging with everybody this turn because he also charges with his Witches into the flank of my Dread Spears, and again, thankfully he does not make it. So this is what the board looks like overall before we go into the magic phase. Alright, so I was looking at this magic phase and I wasn't sure what my strategy was because I let 2 really good spells go through just to stop a mediocre spell. But I think what I was thinking was I was afraid of Shroud of Despair, and so I was willing to let anything go through just to dispel that. And it never popped up, so I just dispelled the last spell, and we go straight into combat. Now in this combat with the Doomfire Warlocks, we actually don't do any wounds to each other. I make a lot of ward saves, but at the end of the day, I lose by 1, and I fail my leadership check, and he runs me down, and that's where he ends up, right after he runs me down. And then we go into the other combat with the Hydra. The Hydra, of course, he kind of kills not too many guys, but he does win combat, and I, of course, stick. With the Executioners, we go into it. I think he's looking to kill my BSB, because he does throw some attacks in his direction, and with Killing Blow, it's kind of scary, but he doesn't actually hit me at all, and I do quite a few wounds back to him, and we kind of maximize our combat even further before we jump into my turn. Alright, so the number one thing I want to do is get my large unit of witches into that flank of that Hydra, and it's actually possible because I am majority in its flank. The only issue is that my block of witches and his block of witches are at such perfect angles that in order for me to get past my Dread Spears, I have to push my witches up far enough to, clear them, and then by the time I want to pivot, his witches are actually slanted enough where it'll interrupt that pivot. So I can't actually, even though I'm in its flank, I just can't actually make the maneuver. So what I'm going to have to do instead is declare a charge against the witches. That's a much further charge. I do declare it, and I do make it. The Dark Riders I was protecting with my Doomfire Warlocks now move around to the side of his Doomfire Warlocks. When I shoot, I will kill one and just get that out of the way. And then my other unit of Dark Riders move around, still trying to hunt down that Sorceress. And again, the 3+ ward save is going to protect her. Alright, so we move up my Sorceress, as you can see here, and I jump into the magic phase. Now my priority is to help these Executioners out, so I'm going to cast Word of Pain first. I didn't necessarily want it to be Irresistible Force, but that's what I got. I reduced the enemy Executioners by 1. That's too bad. This comes down because of the Irresistible Force. Doesn't really do too much. It does kill off a couple of my Dread Spears. It's great that I don't have my Sorceress in the unit itself. Could have been way worse. Overall, though, it helps out the combat. I do keep my BSB alive because of it, and I kill the rest of his Executioners. We go over to the Witches. Now this is just lopsided in my favor. I think I outnumber him almost 2 to 1. I would have liked to avoid this charge because I know it's going to send me to the right, but if I didn't, then he would have been able to charge those Witches into the flank of my Dread Spears. And Yeah, I don't think that would have ended well either. So I just bit the bullet and made that charge, and I of course beat him and overran. We end the turn and go into House Iolith turn 3 with the Hydra chewing on some more Dread Spears, but they hold. So my opponent first declares a charge with his Bleak Swords into my Lone Sorceress. I of course flee, I'm not going to do that at all. He redirects these Bleak Swords into my Executioners and tries to support them with the Cold Wind Knights. Unfortunately for my opponent, he rolls really badly to get into combat with my Executioners with his Bleak Swords, and he sends those Cold Wind Knights in there alone. So that's a very bad matchup for them, and it's not going to go well. So in the magic phase, I'm again looking to stop anything that's going to hurt my leadership, so that's why I stop Ice Shard Blizzard first. He then goes for Word of Pain to cast on my Executioners. Unless he rolls a -3, it's not going to change too much, so I let that go through. He then casts Shroud of Despair, which I use my Dispel Scroll, and then he tries to get more dice, but I stop it. So these Spearmen, they lose some more. This is fantastic. They've been holding this Hydra far longer than I even expected, and I just need them to hold them one more turn so I can turn those witches around. We go into the combat between the Executioners and the Cold Wind Knights, and that's a little predictable. My turn 3 is actually very uneventful, but it's very important. I'm able to turn the witches around. I move a couple things around to take some pot shots. I jump into the magic phase, and it's very blah. It's not. It doesn't really. Nothing really happens. My one spell I get off doesn't really do anything, and then the other spell gets Dispel Scrolled. We go into House Iolith turn 4, and my opponent has lost faith in this block here that he has left. It hasn't made any charges so far, so he goes for the easier charge rather than trying to get those Executioners. He makes it very easily. This is an early picture, but I do pop out my Assassin when combat comes out. He's in the left corner. I just didn't want to move all the models around just to make that happen because I figured these guys were going to die in a second. Miraculously enough, he survives. Everybody else dies. He does take a wound. He doesn't kill anybody, that I remember at least. And yeah, he lives somehow. He, of course, I think is on Snake Eyes. He breaks, and not only does he not get killed in combat, he doesn't get ran down. He gets away, and there's a chance he can rally, and that's never happened before. That's pretty amazing. Alright, so we are in my last turn here, turn 4. Things are winding down, as you can see. I even wrote, instead of writing down magic numbers like I usually do, I just wrote fail for my opponent's last magic phase and mine too. So apparently they weren't successful at all. So in my last turn, I charge these witches into the Hydra. The Executioners go into the back of the Bleak Swords. I move my Fast Cav around to corner the last of these Doomfire Warlocks. Looks like I shot one off last turn. And then I proceed to wipe them out, and we go straight into combat. Alright, so first we start with the witches into the Hydra. I have it in the flank. I have the Razor Banner. I have a ton of attacks. I have poison. So I'm going to kill it. I will overrun, but I'm going to hit the Assassin first. I'm majority front of that unit, so I can't overrun into that unit. We then move to that combat with the Executioners in the rear of the Bleak Swords. My opponent's already conceded the game pretty much. He just moves his characters in the back for formality's sake. We get in combat. He gets in a challenge between the Sorceress and the Executioner champion. I kill him below the Sorceress. Then enough attacks brings the Dreadlord low. And I pretty much win this combat. He is steadfast, but he does break. And that's all the banners. That's the end of the game. The Daughters of the Empyrean Void do win. And with that defeat, House Iolith is probably left in disarray. Supreme Sorceress Harlana, of course, is pleased to have gotten rid of a foe, but she's also more concerned about how she's going to procure ships for future raids into the New World. That's going to be a great concern to her. Hecate did survive this battle, and with that, since one of the twins lived, we have to assume both of the twins lived, even though Caliphone was in a position in which her doom was impending. We can safely assume that Hecate was able to use her dark magic to whisk her to safety before the final blow was set up on her. So it was a great game. I hope my opponent really enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I want to thank my wife for helping me in the beginning there. Again, I do appreciate everybody's likes, comments, and subscriptions. I am going to be unable to make a video, I think, for the next 2 weeks, just because of things that are coming up. But after that, I should be back to the weekly videos. So again, hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate everybody's likes, comments, and subscriptions, and I'll see you next time.